So obviously we're going to talk about Bear Raid. And I think the question everybody asks first is like Bear Raid's pretty different than what you've done before. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, Bear Raid is very different from the two board games that I have published so far. Well, two board games that are for entertainment purposes I published so far. But I've been designing a variety of games for quite a while. So I think as the years pass, as these games come out, you'll see that I have quite a variety of different types of games that come out. Doing everything spatial or on pipes will certainly, hopefully, not be all that gets published.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the thing. Like if you do two games that are kind of similar, or a lot of designers have kind of their thing, right? Like if
Right.
Kinesia released a 3-hour game, we'd all be like, what's going on?
Right. I mean, I had another heavy game that I was working on too, and I purposely didn't release two heavy games back to back because I didn't want to get sort of pigeonholed into the idea
Uh-huh.
of going heavy, and just being heavy only. So I tried to release Curious Cargo, which was lighter, and this game is also much different. So I'm trying to give myself the flexibility to design in the stuff that interests me and not get put into a very specific, like, I can only make heavy Euros that are 2 hours long.
Yeah. Well, I think you've succeeded, right? And I think everybody will realize that once they've played Bear Raid, it is not a puzzle. It's not an optimization. It's a completely different beast. So, like, what do you think you design games that you like to play, or do how does you have this goal of designing kind of in a wide area? Do you play games in a wide area too, or do you stick to one genre more than the others?
So as I try to do this in a more professional manner, I do try to play a wider range of games. Certainly when I wasn't designing as much, I was very sort of strict in the type of games I would play. So I would pretty much only play optimization games,
Yeah.
and I would almost only play it two-player, just because I like that zero-sum nature. I like knowing that I won or I lost because of my own mistakes, and nobody like assisted me or nobody colluded or killed the king or whatever.
Mhm.
So, uh, yeah, I would say that my consumer preferences are pretty narrow, but I do try to play a broad, or I do either play or I watch a bunch of like videos that reviewers do that explain the mechanisms in a variety of games, so that I can sort of build up that sort of encyclopedia of knowledge, so that I can hopefully keep my games fresh and
Yeah,
up to date.
that's interesting because I kind of like both those styles of games where, there is the direct, not always conflict, but the one-on-one nature, like, you kind of bested the other person. And Bear Raid is not that. Like,
No.
it's and one of the things I like about it is it's shorter. So I think it's okay, but like sometimes the table turned against you, and sometimes I don't want to go too far here and say there's no skill involved, because that's certainly not true at all. But you're swimming in a pool of a bunch of other people, and stuff happens.
Right. There's definitely collusion and backstabbing, and very different than my other two games. People will laugh and talk and yell at each other and things like that. So it's usually not very quiet. It can be kind of ruckus, and yeah, it's exciting. It's got big swings. You can see companies split, which can feel great, but it could split a couple times and then bankrupt at the end of the game, and then all that you had sort of built up could be all the way back down to zero again. And you're going to have people pushing and pulling in different directions. And so, yeah, definitely can be feisty. And compared to my other two games, a you don't have, like, a new player has a chance of at least being in the game. Whereas like in Pipeline, a new player against an experienced player will just get absolutely destroyed. And even
Yeah.
more so probably in Curious Cargo. Curious Cargo is probably has a even higher skill cap, I think, than Pipeline. Whereas this one, uh, you could definitely do stuff to help your chances, uh, but you'll also see like skilled players take out other skilled players too. So you know,
Sure. Yeah. Like if I know somebody else is, if you see somebody else making a move that's going to put them in a great position, you can't just sit there and,
right,
and especially like if I've played the game and I'm able to recognize that's coming,
right.
maybe I know like, hey, I'm the only one who can step up here and do that.
Yeah, and Tim Kaiser, who's sort of worked and helped me play test a lot of my games and did development on Curious Cargo and Pipeline. Yeah, when we play together, whoever else is at the table is getting the benefit of us just completely destroying each other.
Yeah.
So, like anytime he does anything that I can see is helping him, it's just like straight to taking him down.
I mean, and that's cool because it lets you play with other people and you're having your fun, they're having their fun.
Right, exactly.
I mean, it's interesting to hear you talking about people laugh and stuff while they're playing. Like, I think Jack called it a party game in her preview video. I mean, I don't want to mislead people. I wouldn't call it a party game, but I can see why people would say that it has those elements to it.
Yeah, I think
It's kind of
people
a weird
refer
thing.
to it as my party game. So what they would
Yeah,
expect
yeah.
me to make as a party game,
Well,
and I agree. That was sort of the intention. When I was making this, I was like, what can I do in that sort of party game space? But you're right. It's certainly not the 20-minute super light thing that most people probably would refer to as a party game. But
I mean, I think we've had people say the same thing about QE, which
right,
kind of has a similar concept of it's got this financial theme on it and it's got numbers and it's got bidding and all these things that you normally take, and it kind of sets your frame of reference to be like, oh, this is going to be a serious time, and then goofy stuff starts happening, and kind of that juxtaposition really almost makes it even funnier.
right.
If you're playing some of these games that are meant to be silly, you kind of expect the silly to happen and everyone's kind of trying, but when it can happen in the context of a competitive game, it can be funnier, or I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Yeah, and I think the game can be played multiple ways too. So like if I'm playing with non-gamers or if I'm playing with fairly new people, we might sort of let it get a little bit more wild, right? And then if I play with my very mathy friends, then we will start calculating things out and stuff like that. So, if you want to play, very mathy, you can, and it will help you.
yeah,
Um, but you can also play it and sort of just see how the stocks are going all over the place, and like just work to try to crush certain things at the end. I mean, you'll see. And one nice thing is like all the information is sort of hidden behind the screens, and so you don't really know exactly where everybody is, and there are big swings all the way up to the last turn. And so you could have somebody who's winning or you think is winning, and on the last turn, it could swing several $100s, and that could all sort of change. I know the last game I played, every single stock bankrupted on the last turn,
ooh,
and I happened to have no long positions in the game. I was short on every stock, so it worked out for me. That was
yeah. So
exactly
you
what I was
won
shooting
that. You
for.
won that game.
I did win that one. I did, yeah, but I don't win all the time.
Now you were talking about playtesting earlier. What was the playtesting process like for Bear Raid?
So Bear Raid has been the easiest game I've had to play test ever, which was surprising to me, I guess. With Pipeline was difficult for me to get play tested, and really I had to go to online play testing prior to the whole COVID situation with Pipeline, just because I needed access to gamers who would want to play it. With Bear Raid, actually my local meetups, not even playtesting meetups, they actually would request the game, and I actually had several of those folks also request print and plays. So I would just bring the game half the time and just hand it off to people, and then other people made print and plays, and then they would provide me feedback that way as well. So I didn't even have to be around for half the playtesting, which was a
That's
brand new
nice.
experience for me.
Now, did a lot change during the playtest period? So, like, I know I've designed of the games we've published, I designed 2 of them, and the only reason they got to market is because they kind of found their spot early.
Hmm.
You know, if I had had to keep iterating, I don't know if I would have had the time to do it. So I'm always fascinated to hear this. You hear some designers say, "Oh, I've been working on this game for 6 years, and I keep changing, threw away half of it." And then other times I'll hear of a game that people say, "Oh, I pretty much wrote down the rules, and that's the game."
Right.
Which
So
of those do you think? What camp is Bear Raid in, or probably somewhere in the middle?
no, it's very much in one camp, and I got extremely lucky. I play tested it one time, and I adjusted some numbers, and that was it. I didn't change any rules.
Really?
It was crazy. Yeah, that was very, very lucky, and that is not normally the case. Usually, I bring things in front of people, and there's significant changes that need to happen. With this one, I wasn't expecting it to go over well, and I put it in front of people, and they seemed to like it right away. So purely lucky. I'm not saying that was skill on my part at all. I just happened to make
Yeah.
a thing, and it just happened to click. And it wasn't even like I thought this was going to be a hit right off the get go either. It was just I was like, let's get this in front of people and see what they think, because that's sort of my, uh, you know, sort of my strategy or whatever. I'm making games is I try to get stuff in front of people really quickly, and you know,
Mhm.
it it just stayed. I don't know. I don't know why this one happened to be lucky or why it worked, but
Sure.
not by my own smarts, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of like the musician who says they wrote a song in one night, on a napkin or something, and sometimes it just comes together, I guess. So one thing I like about Bear Raid is it supports a wide range of players. Goes 3 to 6. What did was your first design? Did you think it was going to work 3 to 6 players? Did you did you add the sixth later? How did kind of how has that worked out as you tested it across different player counts?
So I think I had it at 3 to 6. I think I knew that 2 was just not going to work for this style
Yeah,
of game. I think who knows? There's always people on BGG who make variants for things, but
sure.
I'm skeptical that 2 will work very well, and so that hasn't gone in. This was before I even tried to attempt solo type things, but I also don't think solo works for this. So uh, yeah, that was the range that I originally thought, and I I think that they're all interesting. So I think you have a little bit more, maybe a little bit more control because there's a little bit more time, like in number of rounds for the lower player counts. But at the higher player counts, you can actually do some strategies that just aren't available in the lower player counts. So you can actually do more writing other people's efforts. So if you can actually, so instead of trying to manipulate all the stocks yourself, you can sort of pay attention to how the stocks are moving around, and you can just sort of pivot around yourself. You can win that way too. So I like that that they offer different uh, you know aspects at the different player counts. So uh, I think you'll get a different experience at both, and I think that they're both interesting.
So let's talk about strategies. Can you give us any idea of any maybe more specific strategies or things you look for during the game that are either, I don't know, fun things to pull off, or kind of the moves you can make the game interesting from your point of view?
Right. So you definitely want to be paying attention to what other people are doing the entire game. So that's it. It is definitely a game where you want to see what position your opponents are in on each of the different companies. Now, you yourself are probably only going to have a position in 2 to 3 of the companies uh, at a time. So it's not like you need to understand all the positions for like in 6 players, right? There's 6 different companies.
Sure.
You're still only probably going to have positions in 2 to 3 of them. So you need to pay attention to those in particular, and you need to see basically who is in a similar position to you and who is in sort of an opposite position to you. And so those are going to be sort of, your allies and your opponents. And the fun thing is that you're not going to be like, I might be aligned with one player on one stock, but I might actually be against them on another stock. So you're not going to be like aligned, like, if I'm playing with Tim or whatever, not that we would ever be aligned ever, but you know, we wouldn't ever be like perfectly aligned. We would have, part interest on one stock maybe that was, we wanted to go in one way, and then another stock we might be sort of against each other. So I don't feel like you in this game, like, you feel like you're targeting like specific people, because you end up being sort of you're colluding with somebody sometimes and also against them at other times, right? And so that's one thing you need to pay attention to. Turn order is a big thing because of based off of when you throw dice in, and like you said, you use dice to manipulate the companies. Based off of when you throw dice in, if you throw them in and the person who's directly against you is the person who will be up next in turn order the next round, you've just thrown all those dice right to that player, essentially. And so you have to be careful about where the turn order button is for the next rounds. And then you also just need to pay attention to the cards as they come up. But the nice thing about the cards is, yes, they aren't exactly symmetrical, but all cards can go positive or negative based off of how you manipulate the dice. And so it's not like you'll just see cards and it'll just be a run of all bad cards and then you're just automatically hosed. No, you can actually do stuff with the dice to make sure that it goes to the opposite side of that card. So the cards do have both sides. Every card can go positive and negative. They're just not exactly symmetrical. So they do lean a little bit, but that's in your control.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing I really like about the game is you've got all these dice, you've got the cards, but like, I never felt like the dice were in control of the game. Maybe I wasn't in 100% control because there's other people at the table, but the dice are a factor, but there's so much you can do to control them. The cards are a factor, but you can see what the next two cards are going to be.
Right.
Like, it's these random things that I'm able to react to.
Right. Yeah, the cards come out ahead of time, and you get to peek ahead around as well. And so you do know how those events sort of come up. And yeah, because the events can go both ways based off of what you do, what you choose, you have potential to control those things. Now, where it gets tricky is when you have positions in multiple different stocks, and you're trying to affect multiple different events across the different stocks. That's where some of the harder decision making comes. So you have to decide, okay, what do I need to do so that I'm able to get both of these stocks to move in the direction I want it to go, whether it's positive or negative.
Yeah. Do you have any? Do you have a personal favorite game of Bear Raid that you've played, or a person of favorite time or thing that happened during a game?
Oh, we've had all kinds of wild things. So yeah, this game definitely has crazy stuff happen. We've had people with 50 plus shares in companies before because the companies split 2, 3, 4 times. We've had situations where I guess the most fun thing to do is when you are short on a company and you're going against somebody who has a long position in that company, to bump their stock price up so that it splits, right? And so they'll essentially help you with that typically because that's helping them, right? They're making money off that split. But then when the stock splits, it brings it back to a price that is potentially lower than where it was, right? So let's say it was at like $40. It's hard to bankrupt a company from $40 in the game. But if you can push it to split and then it splits back down to 25, it's much easier to bankrupt it.
Sure.
So
they have twice as many shares, but each share is worth half as much now.
Right. And you have twice as many short positions. So you're you're putting yourself, out there on the cliff edge. So you could really hose yourself doing this, and that's part of why it's so fun. But you push it over so it splits, and now now you're in a real bad position, except for now you have a chance to push it down to 0. And so you look at how many more rounds there are in the game and see if you can get any support from somebody and see if you could then crash that company. So yeah, it's fun to push it to a split, get a whole bunch of get that company where somebody is highly invested, and then try to crash it from there. So that's probably one of the most fun things. But as far as like memorable games, there's so many different crazy things that we've had happen. Like I mentioned, the one that we played recently where every single company bankrupted on the last turn, so having any long positions ended up being useless. We've had, like I said, the ones where people have had 50 plus shares of things. We've had people with like 50 plus shares of things where people were within just 1 or 2 shares of each other in that too, and so it was very difficult to know who was winning, and so that was pretty fun. So at the end we're counting it up, and so yeah, it's
So you're saying
very
every
wild, very
game,
volatile.
you're saying every time you play it, it's going to be exactly the same.
No, not at all. No.
Yeah. Okay. I think this has been great, and I don't think we need to make it too long. Is there anything else about the game that you think we should cover?
No, I do want to give a shout out to my mother. It's her birthday today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So happy birthday, Mother. I know you'll be listening to this. So
All right. That is great. Happy birthday. And let's just close it here.
all right.